At this point, it's no surprise that the cost of living in Canada is out of control. Today, food banks are being overwhelmed with the amount of people who are now dependent on them for survival. We're being led to believe that the price increases we're seeing in everyday goods like gas and groceries is due to inflation. And yet it seems that the corporations that sell these goods are reporting record profits year after year. So what's really going on here? Why is it that prices never seem to go back down? How can these companies get away with gouging their customers? And lastly, what are the effects on the average Canadian today? What you're looking at are the big three. Canada's grocery oligopoly. Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro. They have immense power and take up a huge percentage in the grocery market in Canada. Welcome to the free market where competition is vast and... Wait a minute. Didn't these same three companies get convicted of anti-competitive behavior because they were fixing the price of bread? Oh yeah. Yeah, that's right. They did do that, colluding and artificially raising the price of packaged bread for 14 years straight. That's 14 consecutive years of illegal, anti-competitive, anti-consumer, and anti-Canadian behavior. It's no wonder why people hate these companies. Here's the thing, proving this in court is incredibly hard to do, and I'll get into why that is later in the video. So I commend the prosecutors immensely for their hard work on this case. It could not have been easy. But here's the thing, it likely doesn't stop with bread. That was only what they were able to prove. And while what I'm about to say is pure speculation, I wouldn't put it past them to do it with other products. I mean, they've done it once, what's stopping them from doing it again? Negative sentiment around these companies is growing, and for good reason. Just a few months back, a Reddit community started a massive boycott against the Loblaws because they've been increasing profits while everyday Canadians are suffering. But thank God the shareholders are happy, am I right? What would we do without them? Oh, I don't know. Maybe eat food at a reasonable price? Wouldn't that be nice? Over the last few years, these big companies have been blaming the price increases on inflation. Meanwhile, in the shadows, they're recording record profits every quarter, it seems. Guys, we're so sorry, but we can't do anything about the rising prices in food. We swear. There's nothing we can do. All the while, inflation is down from where it once was, according to the CPI report. So this begs the question, why are prices not coming down? So we're all familiar with inflation at this point, right? Objectively, it's very simple. Prices go up. That's like a very layman way of saying it, but you get the idea. But what I'm sure you're less familiar with is deflation, which is when prices go down. I know, that's a real thing. Hard to f***ing believe. Now, there are lots of things that can cause deflation. Spoiler alert, none of which I think will happen in Canada in the short term, but let's talk them through anyway. Number one, technological advancements in production and distribution. Look, let's be honest, even if that does happen, these companies are keeping those gains for themselves. They're not passing that along to consumers. It's just not happening. Number two, overproduction or a surplus. Again, let's keep it real. There's already a ton of wasted food. That's not going to stop companies from keeping prices high. Number three, strong domestic currency. You're kidding, right? Number four, reduced consumer demand. Impossible. We all need food. There will always be demand for food. Number five, government subsidies. I don't think it's necessary for the government to give a cash influx to these giga corporations. The only way I'm seeing this working is if they give subsidies to local competitors. That's not really an effective way to bring prices down in the long term. Number six, population decline. Look, even with the temporary foreign workers and international students being kicked out of the country, that's not substantial enough to make an impact on grocery prices. Number seven, shift in consumer preferences. Yeah, I mean, I think we would all prefer to be fed as opposed to be starving, but that's just a personal preference. I'm not going to speak on your behalf. Number eight, deflationary spiral in the economy. Yeah, I mean, no. Really, the only major macroeconomic factor that could bail us out here is like some global supply chain stuff going on where the cost of everything gets cheaper, basically, which is like, that sounds like a fantasy, sounds like a dream. Okay, So we need food. I'm sure you understand that at this point. In economics, food is considered an essential good. And because of that, it falls victim to what is called demand inelasticity. That means no matter what happens to the price, there will always be demand for it, which is unconventional because you would typically believe that if price goes up, then demand would go down. If something becomes out of reach, people are going, hell no, I'm not paying for that. But this is food we're talking about. Of course there's demand for food. And so what this means is these companies have absolutely zero interest in bringing prices down. They want to see how far they can get away with it, how high they can push prices to truly figure out what is the breaking point. They assume that customers will just adjust to the new price, and even if there is some cost savings that they have along the way, why would they drop prices when customers are already used to paying $5 for a loaf of bread? Okay, so these companies are unethical at best, malicious at worst. I mean, we're literally talking about the food in our bellies. So why are they able to get away with this? Well, put simply, our regulation is way too lax. It seems like our government essentially endorses anti-competitive mergers and acquisitions. They turn a blind eye and let these oligopolies get away with damn near anything that they want. In some towns, there's only like 1 or 2 options for groceries. How is that a competitive environment? And I mentioned before that they got caught for bread fixing. We as consumers got lucky that that was uncovered, because again, that shady behavior is likely still going on right under our nose. To prove price fixing in court requires strong, direct evidence, which is really hard when there's almost always no paper trail. You also need to be able to prove intent. And look, I get it. These are profit-driven organizations. They have incentive to make profit, but incentive and intent are 2 different things. On top of that, these companies will use sophisticated tactics like informal meetings or even using messengers. Uncovering something like this is incredibly resource intensive. And of course, there's obviously a fear amongst potential whistleblowers that there may be some kind of repercussions against them. I mean, just look at what's happening with Boeing. Of course, it's all alleged, but still, that's friggin' scary. It's clear that this issue is greater than the companies themselves. Our government needs to make a stronger stance against anti-competitive behavior to protect Canadians against these profit-driven mega corporations. So that just leaves me with one question. How is this affecting the average Canadian citizen? In March of 2024, 2 million Canadians visited food banks all across the country. That is a 90% increase since 2019. There is so much demand that these food banks can barely keep up. And get this, 1 in 5 of these food bank users have a steady job. That's 20% of them. They are way over capacity. They're struggling to keep up because the majority of their supply is donation driven, not subsidized by the government. And by majority, I mean like 90% of their supply. And if all Canadians are feeling strapped, what does that mean? The amount of people who can afford to donate also goes down. So many Canadians need help these days when it comes to their housing costs, their food costs, and just general living expenses. Things are getting too expensive and people can't keep up. Wages aren't keeping up. A 2022 study found that on average, Canadians will spend 11% of their take-home pay on food. But that's not a fair representation of the issue. High income earners will only spend around 5.2% of their take-home pay on food, while low-income individuals and families will spend 25% of their income on food. That's not because they're spending more. That's just because it takes up a larger percentage of their income. So no surprise here, lower income individuals and families are disproportionately affected by the rising cost of living. Feels like what was once the middle class is now the poverty line. Just insanity. What can we do to make this situation better as regular people? I mean, it feels like we don't really have much control, but what can we do? What is within our control? I suggest you reach out to your local MP and urge them to be more aggressive against these major grocers. Try supporting local grocery stores in your area if their pricing makes sense to you, of course. This is an ongoing issue and one that I will continue to keep my eye on. I do plan on making a video about how bad the food bank dependency has become in Canada. So if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it when it comes out. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you want to watch another one of my videos, Check out this one about why young people are stuck living at home.